Hello, everybody, and welcome to our new special education teacher overview for teachers of students with learning and behavior disorders. My name is Laura Clark, and I am one of the special education consultants at the Northern Kentucky Cooperative for Educational Services, and I'm glad you are here with us today. In this training, you should have access to what we call the launching page that has hyperlinks to all of the documents and resources that we'll be sharing in this training, including a link to this video. At the end of this launching page, you have access to a quiz. And when you complete the quiz with 80% accuracy, you will get an email sent to the email that you provide in the quiz with your training certificate. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. In order to get your certificate, you need to earn 80%, but no worries. You can take the quiz as many times as you need if you don't earn that 80% in the first go round. When we think about what we as teachers do during the day, it is a multi-dimensional, complex dance, and I'm representing it here with some beautiful building blocks. So if we kind of work our way around the building blocks, one of the first things that we need to make sure that we have set in our days are lesson plans for every lesson that we are going to be teaching. Some of us teach in one area, like we do a lot of reading groups. Others of us teach across multiple different areas. Some of us co-teach and others collaborate with general education teachers, but regardless of what your situation is, you'll need to have lesson plans prepared for all of the lessons that you teach. And you'll want to follow, and actually not want, you need to follow the guidelines set by your district and building administrators. In addition, if you look at the green and red block next to the blue block, you'll want to make sure that you have some kind of a daily schedule posted and that you have each student on your caseloads daily scheduled. Those aren't necessarily posted in a public place. Those should be kept private, but you definitely need to have every student's schedule so you know where they are throughout the day. Continuing to work across in the big yellow building block, we want to make sure we know each student's IEP, including their goals, the data collection system that we're using for progress monitoring. We want to make sure that we've gone through their records. In some districts, that might be called a CUME folder or their special education binder, but whatever term your district uses, you want to make sure that you've gone through their cumulative records so that you have a good overall picture of your student. Know that all those records are confidential and you'll need to follow your district procedures for maintaining their safety and confidentiality. You want to have a plan for communicating with parents, and you'll want to follow the district protocols for that. Many districts in Kentucky use Infinite Campus to document online all of your communications with parents. You want to make sure that you are consistent in how you follow that system. If we go back over to the left, you need to make sure that you're setting up your classroom environment so that it will support the instruction that you'll be doing in your classroom. Yellow block, you want to make sure that if you have students with behavior plans, whether that's a formal behavior intervention plan or a less formal behavior plan, that you have that in place and you have all of the documentation or progress monitoring ready to go. We want to make sure we know how students get to and from school. So in some districts, that includes a bus schedule. In other places, students walk to and from school or are car riders. Whatever way your student gets to and from school or goes to an after school or before school program, you need to know where your students are coming and going from. And you want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of the district and your building's emergency plans. In addition, when students are in your room, you want to have a very clear classroom emergency plan in place. And if you're supporting students that have different medical or behavioral needs, you want to make sure that you've got a plan clearly in place to support them. In addition, if you have any students that are on alternate assessment, that you have the record system in place that your district is using. Some districts use what is called the AAAF, the Alternate Assessment Accountability Folder. Other districts are beginning to use their own systems. You just need to make sure that if you have a student on alternate assessment, that you have a plan in place for maintaining their records. And you want to make sure that you have started to organize your caseload management system. That includes making sure that you know when all of your students are up for reevaluation, when their annual reviews are, and any other paperwork that goes with supporting students in your district and your building. So, as we get started, and we've had that big overview of all the pieces that go into our pie, we want to make sure that our first thought in the morning is how we can support our students in a positive way. So I love this image from Brooks that they shared on Twitter and Instagram that says that positive school climate begins with a teacher who practices authentic praise, involves students in decision making, fosters positive relationships, and actively engages students in the learning process. So if you're looking for a quick check every day to make sure you are on track and on task with being a highly effective educator, I would encourage you to use these top fours and ask yourself as you start the day and end the day, am I ready to do these things? And at the end of the day, did I today engage in authentic praise, building relationships, involving students in the learning process, and actively engage them throughout the day? A great tool to start our learning. I've put together several tools that have evolved over time from multiple wonderful teachers who have different systems in place. I would highly encourage you to start your teaching journey by asking your district and building administrators for teacher mentors in the building that have wonderful practice. And I would ask them for specific areas in which you are growing your practice. So you might want to ask questions like this. Tell me a teacher in the building that you feel like develops wonderful IEPs. Which lesson plans do you feel like really exemplify the lessons you are looking for in this building? And there might be different teachers that they identify for different skill sets, but it's best practice to go ahead and work with your administrators and make friends with the teachers in your building by talking with them about things that they do well. And this sheet that I'm sharing with you here is a compilation of best practices that were handed down to me in my early teaching days that I continue to refine and share with teachers over time. This is an interactive Google Doc, so you can go in and make all the changes you would like to make this fit your school environment and your student caseload. But just the quick overview is you're thinking about your class culture and making sure that you're on track with positive tones and words, that you're using positive expectations, that your classroom spaces feel safe for students. You're thinking about your environment, the type of instruction you're going to provide, behavior supports, what you need to know about your students' IEP goals, and parent communication. And those topics should look familiar because we looked at those in our building blocks on the very beginning of the presentation. So as I said, my encouragement to you is to print this out, go through step by step, and you might want to consider a rating system, whether you're just checking off ones as you get them in place, or maybe you're using a rating system, a 0 being, I haven't started that yet, and a 5 being, I've got it in place. Smiley faces and frowny faces, whatever works for you to know that you have things in place. This is a good starting point. You have a second video after the one that you're watching now, hopefully, where I'll walk you through step by step the pieces of supporting students in a resource or collaborative classroom. And we'll be talking some about co-teaching. So this is a great resource. And again, it's an interactive tool where you can add information, delete information, personalize it for your school. When you are thinking about the resources that you should definitely have on hand, I will share with you some of my favorites and the favorites of some of my colleagues. The Champs book by Randy Sprick from Safe and Civil Schools is one that I used almost every day in my early teaching experience, and it really helped me start strong. Anita Archer, who is another presenter with Safe and Civil Schools, has this phrase she uses a lot: avoid the void, for they will fill it. Meaning, if you don't have instructional plans set for your students that take them from the beginning bell to the end of the bell, then sometimes students will fill that empty space with behaviors and activities that are not appropriate for learning. So you want to make sure that you have a strong classroom management plan that's aligned to your school and district plan, and you want it to be positive and proactive, where you are consistently telling students your expectations, what you would like them to do, rather than telling them what not to do. But stating in 3 to 5 rules or expectations, here's what we're going to do to make sure that everyone is safe and learning today. Another fantastic resource that is foundational to best practices in teaching is Explicit Instruction. And so if you haven't had a background in explicit instruction, we have several trainings on our NKCES website, and one that is hyperlinked in here for you that will walk you through the foundations of explicit instruction. You want to make sure that you're providing that specially designed instruction for every student based on their IEP goals. And often when you're thinking about a student's IEP goals, one of the first strategies that I usually go to when I'm thinking about how to help a student master a goal is explicit instruction in that area, whether it's an academic skill or a behavioral skill or a functional life skill that a student needs to acquire. In every situation I can think of right now, I needed to provide some explicit instruction in how a student could master that concept. I love this other quote by Anita Archer that's on the slide: how well you teach equals how well they learn. There's a direct correlation there. If I teach it well, then students will learn it. And sometimes I teach it really well, but I didn't teach it in a way that my student was ready to learn. So I need to teach it in a different way. One of my favorite quotes when I was in the beginning of my teaching career was, saying it louder does not mean they will learn it better, right? So just repeating the same thing over and over again often doesn't lead to better outcomes. Sometimes students need us to explicitly teach it in a different way. I've got another tool that you can use. And again, this one I developed over time with my students' caseloads in mind. And so if you're looking from left to right, the form allows you to add every student, and you can add line after line depending on how large your caseload is. So you've got every student's name, and then I always listed their areas of eligibility, when their reevaluations were due. And often I would go ahead, and if I was responsible for setting those meetings, I would actually kind of backwards chain that. So if the reevaluation was due in January of 2022, then I would backwards chain that out for when we needed to have that initial meeting to get permission and all the different steps in between. Your district and building administrators will be able to provide you with the timelines used in your district and the requirements. So you'll want to make sure you have that in place. You want to know when every annual ARC or annual IEP is due so that you can schedule those meetings. You want to know who is allowed to be at those meetings and make sure that you've looked at the proper paperwork so that you know which parents or guardians can be at the meeting. You want to consider the goals that are currently in place for your student and make sure that they match the student's area of eligibility. You also want to know when and where the student should receive their services, the accommodations that they could have, and any additional notes, like if a student has a behavior intervention plan. This is just a foundational form. Again, you can change it to meet your needs, add columns, add information, whatever works best for you to make sure that you have all that information in a place where you can access it. You will need to share with all the general education teachers who work with your student information about their special education services, and you'll want to follow your district protocol for that. Keep in mind that all of this information is confidential and must be maintained following the confidentiality procedures that are in place in your district. Another form that you can use is an example of a formative feedback that an administrator or another teacher could share with you. So the way this form works is in one district, the big ideas for their district for the year were meaningful engagement, formative assessment, accountable talk, and effective collaborative learning. Those were the district priorities that were shared with all teachers. And so in this building, the teachers got together and said, okay, if that's what our big ideas are, the things we really want to support in our teaching and learning for students, then what does that look like in a moderate to severe disabilities classroom, a structured teaching classroom, an LBD resource classroom, a collaborative setting, co-teaching? They walked through that. So this is an encouragement to ask in your district, do we have big priorities in place? Is this year the year where we're all using explicit instruction, or we're all using some kind of cooperative learning strategies? And if so, what does that look like in the settings where I teach? All right, a few of my favorite resources here. I've already shared several of my favorite things, being the Safe and Civil Schools resources like CHAMPS from Randy Sprick, Explicit Instruction with Anita Archer. I am a member of the Council for Exceptional Children. If you haven't heard of them before, this is our international organization to support students with disabilities. They have lots of excellent free resources and annual conferences. In Kentucky, we have Kentucky CEC, which is a fantastic group. So I would encourage you to check the CEC website out, look for the free resources, and then if you click on the membership tab and look at states, and then go to Kentucky CEC and check out all the fantastic resources we have in our state to support students. One of my favorite resources for really deepening my own understanding and supporting learning in the buildings where I taught were videos created by Daniel Habib. He is a videographer who has Samuel, his son, here. Samuel's an adult now. This is him when he was smaller on the bottom left. And he started documenting Samuel's life and then moved on to create a video about Kelsey, and then a video about several adults who have intellectual disabilities, and really challenging that notion of what do we mean by IQ and intelligence. Who Cares About Kelsey looks deeply into students that might have some behaviors. And including Samuel, Samuel has some intellectual and physical needs that need to be supported in learning. These are just great ways to start the conversation and start the learning. If you don't have access to these videos in your district or your school, there are free little mini commercial videos you can access from the site, and you can check with your local library or with us at the co-op to check out these great videos. Special Olympics has developed all kinds of wonderful resources. They have information on how you can develop a school of strength and have a school-wide inclusion initiative. They also have what they're now calling Joyful Revolution, where you can work with students to take the inclusion pledge. So when you are looking at best practices in inclusion across all areas of schooling, I'd encourage you to check out the Special Olympics. Brooks Publishing has shared this great free resource that really helps us explain as teachers what we mean by fair and equal. And it does a beautiful job of explaining why we differentiate instruction and why we provide specially designed instruction and accommodations for students. And I love how they use this medical model that, if four kids come to us and they have all different things going on, upset tummy and a hurt knee, and they think they broke their arm and they have a cough, and we give every kid cough medicine, only one kid gets what they need. We need to provide the right dose, the right support to every student to meet their needs. I've linked in this resource because I think this is a fantastic resource to post in our classrooms, to share with children, to post in our teachers' break rooms, to remind us that we need to give every student what they need. If you're thinking about continuing your learning, because I know for all of us as teachers, I continue to learn something new every day to support students, and I hope that you consider that to be your lifelong journey also. I would offer to you that on our online website, we have all kinds of fantastic free PD that you can join in. From deepening your understanding of explicit instruction, to learning more about co-teaching, to thinking about functions of behavior, and looking at executive function and what that is and how we can support students, to how we can support acquisition of vocabulary and beyond. There's now more than 50 trainings on our website. They're all free, and you are welcome to take them all if you would like. When we're looking at our evidence base of things we can do to support students, in addition to academic content knowledge, we also know that the key foundations to learning for many students are that they feel safe in our buildings. So there are many, many fantastic videos and resources on ensuring students feel safe. A lot of that work is happening around the concept of trauma-informed care. We have 3 and more being added trainings right now on the NKCES website on trauma-informed care. And this is just a short little snippet of some of the pieces we have in that. We know that teaching mindfulness to students and growth mindset can make a significant difference to ensuring students are comfortable and ready to learn. And there are also lots of things we can do to make sure all students feel safe. So if you've downloaded this slides show as a PDF, if you click on either of these images that are on the slide, it will take you to both videos that are hyperlinked in. A great resource to help us support our students' social and emotional learning needs is CASEL. CASEL continues to evolve their resources over time to support student social emotional needs in the current learning environment we are in now. And in 2020, two big rocks in learning that we are supporting definitely are helping students understand and learn through the COVID-19 experience, and also looking at the culturally responsive teaching and anti-racism lens. And CASEL has multiple free webinars and resources on their website that help us as we continue to evolve our teaching understanding of the role and interdependence of helping students with their social and emotional learning at the same time we're supporting their academic skills. When we look at teaching, as a student, a lot of times we were focused on what the teacher said the learning targets were. But we know that as educators who are in charge of the classroom, there are a lot more interconnected cogs than just the academic piece of my learning target. We also have to support a safe classroom for our students and support behavioral needs. And there is significant research behind evidence-based practices that we can use to support students with not only EBD, but a variety of learning needs in our classrooms. The overview of behavior supports that's on our online website uses the form you see on the left and focuses on what the evidence-based practices are and what you might hope to achieve if you use those. So for example, with active supervision, that strategy in a really quick nutshell is making sure that we're supervising and supporting students by moving throughout the classroom and interacting with students in a positive and proactive way. And when we do that, we can decrease disruptions and increase positive feedback opportunities and build rapport and relationships with students, which the evidence continues to show that relationship building with students is one of the most effective practices we can use to support students. So when you're thinking about additional resources, I have hyperlinked in a variety of resources, including this one looking at what we can do instead of suspending students. What should be our first go-to instead of sending students out of the classroom? How can we keep kids in the classroom and learning? Restorative justice is one concept that we definitely should be considering and learning more about. So I've linked in some articles there. And then there are some fantastic books that are kind of foundational to the concept of restorative justice. So I've hyperlinked in that resource so you can look a little bit more and see if your building already has some restorative justice materials. In addition, on our online website, we have a video series and PD on de-escalation strategies, which is wonderful to support the learning of all students. Because if we really think about it, there are times when all students are frustrated in the learning and feeling defeated or want to give up, and we need to support them. De-escalation strategies often work wonderfully. If you want to learn more about the concept in general, I'd encourage you to dive into our evidence-based strategies overview training. And then if you'd like to dive into some of the strategies specifically, like active supervision, there are more trainings available. For many students, not just students with IEPs, but all students, having visual supports really helps in the learning process. So one resource that I would recommend is Lessonpix, and you might want to check and see if your building or someone there has a subscription already. Lessonpix right now is less than $40 a year, and it has the opportunity to build all kinds of visual supports for our students. You can make your own using a Google Doc or Google Slides, but if you'd like to use something a little bit more formal, Lessonpix is a great first start to use. I've got some examples of 3 resources that I built. We had a student who was struggling with following directions to go to the bus. So we created a daily report for the bus, and we developed a first then for our student, because our student thought that he should be able to run back and forth in the seats when he was on the bus instead of sitting. So his first then pictures were, first you sit down and then you wait for the bus driver to tell you what to do next. And for our student, they loved bubble gum, so they were working for bubble gum. So if they sat and were quiet and kept their hands to themselves and listened to the adults, then they got bubble gum before they got off the bus. I built all of these tools in less than 10 minutes using Lessonpix. It is a fantastic teacher tool. We sometimes think of using tools like this for students with moderate to severe disabilities, students with autism. But as we know from our own lives, visual supports just make life easier, and we can use them for students at a variety of levels, including high school. We just have to pick in cooler pictures, and Lessonpix does allow you to pull in your own images. If you'd like to learn more about visual supports, Dr. Waddy has a great training on our website all about visual supports. We talked about Anita Archer and how wonderful she is. If you want to watch a master teacher at work, like I have, she has posted multiple videos, elementary and secondary, that show effective teaching. And I watch these videos over and over again because her teaching is so nuanced and wonderful to engage students. She does such a great job of modeling how we can incorporate instruction and academic content. That is a new teacher. I would highly encourage you to watch, and watch some more her videos and put her practices into place. She has wonderful teaching strategies. We have 2 additional online website trainings right now for explicit instruction, in addition to the first one I talked about. This one specifically looks at explicit instruction in the terms of supporting students with challenging behaviors, and is a great quick dive if you'd like to learn more about supporting behavior. The explicit instruction overview is a great place to start, and then head to the 25 tips next if you'd like to learn more. In addition, the National Center on Intensive Intervention has some fantastic modules. They have 9 right now, all focused on using explicit instruction because it is such a highly researched and high evidence base to support students, not just with academic learning, but also to increase appropriate behaviors. If you'll notice here on the slide, there are multiple links that you can access with additional resources to learn more about explicit instruction. The Council for Exceptional Children has worked with the Cedar Center, and they have developed a whole series of high leverage practices. So they've gone through all the research and said, these are the key things we need to do to be great teachers. There are more high leverage practices being added all the time. So I would encourage you to bookmark this site and check out all of the videos and resources that are available for free on their site. You'll also want to make sure that you dive into PBIS and learn more about those positive behavior interventions that we can use to support students in their learning. Edutopia has a whole series of fantastic free videos and articles that you can use to support your teaching. So if there's any area where you'd like to learn more, I would dive into Edutopia's videos. Many of us have taken IRIS modules while we were in our college programs. IRIS Center has recently revamped their site, and they have hundreds of resources that you can use if you have a new student or a student for whom interventions aren't working well. I would encourage you to head to the IRIS Center and check out some of the resources that they have. In addition, CI3T has all kinds of professional learning information, all evidence-based strategies that you can use. If you click on the professional learning tab that I have highlighted in white and scroll down this page about halfway down, you'll see a whole series of evidence-based interventions you can use to support students. For students with disabilities, we are required to use evidence-based practices, so this is a great place to go to make sure you have evidence-based practices ready to go. And here's an example of what that would look like. They have all of these blue interventions, like instructional feedback, and so I wanted to learn more about pre-correction. When you click on a tab, it will open up and you'll see a quick video that explains the strategy, and then all kinds of resources you can use to make sure that you're implementing pre-correction correctly. The thing I love about this site is it not only tells me about the intervention, but it gives me checklists and all kinds of different forms I can use for progress monitoring, information I can use to check with students and parents to make sure that the intervention is working well. A great resource. In Kentucky, we have the ABRI, which gives us all kinds of great interventions through the multi-tiered systems of support. So tiers 1 through 3, all kinds of excellent support resources. This website has really deep and rich videos, so I'd encourage you to take some time to dig through there. If you are supporting students with autism, please check out the Kentucky Autism Training Center and bookmark their site. They have all kinds of excellent resources. They're also a great group to follow on Twitter because they share out lots of excellent tips. I've linked in here our website so that you can bookmark and check out some of the different trainings that we have on site. In addition, a few more of my favorite sites. The National Education Association has all kinds of great information for new teachers. Mrs. D's Corner has great advice for new teachers from a veteran teacher, and she has shared tons of great free resources. And LD Online has excellent information about supporting students with learning disabilities and ADHD. So that's just a few of my favorites and a few quick tips for new teachers. If you have any questions, please reach out to me by email, or feel free to follow me and message me on Twitter, and utilize our free online training website to help you build your practice. Have a great afternoon or morning or evening whenever you are taking this training.